No joke, I went into my boss's office that day and I said, I quit. And I'm going to go be an ethical hacker. He sort of laughed at me and thought I was crazy. And 6 months later, I got my first job as an ethical hacker. And that quickly led to joining one of the best teams in the country, which led to me running it. And not long after that, I started my own company because I saw that there was a problem with human security and that no one was really focusing on it.
Today on Technado, we'll be talking with Joshua Crumbaugh, the chief hacker at PeopleSec, about end-user security. We're going to talk about the new release of CentOS, and we're also going to take a look at the exploit affecting vBulletin. That's all coming up on Technado, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined, as always, by Don Pizzette here in Don Pizzette's office. How you doing, Don?
Hi, I'm Don Pizzette.
See? I was right. And Justin.
Nailed
Dennison.
it. Nailed
Dennis
it.
Justinson?
Dennis Justinson.
Dustin Jennison.
Of course, the JD behind JD Power and Associates. And I did
I
spend
didn't
some time
say
on
that.
eBay, and I did not find a JD Powers award yet. So again, we're still looking for a JD Power Award trophy if any of you have one out there.
We're going to make that happen.
Yeah, if any of you work for Chevrolet, because apparently they have millions.
I would also settle for a Tony Award.
Sure.
Which I don't know if
Yeah.
podcasts qualify for or not.
Yeah, I don't know where JD Power fits on the EGOT, but it's got to be somewhere in there. The EJOT. Yeah. All right, we got a big show for you today. We've got a lot of stories, some CentOS stuff, CentOS, whatever. I don't know the words here.
At least you're pronouncing them
Start over. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, sure.
Ish.
Yeah.
We also got an interview with Joshua Crumbaugh, who is the chief hacker and CEO over at PeopleSec. We're going to be talking about phishing and end-user security and all that exciting stuff. Also, we're going to be playing Buzzword Bingo today, so if you want to play along with us, head on over to go.itpro.tv/buzzword-bingo. Grab your card. You can just play online there. And as we say ridiculous things like, I don't know, IPO. You can check them out. No one said that one in a few weeks, so I'm like, I'll give you guys a freebie.
Yeah, thank you.
There, you're welcome.
Might need it.
What did I say?
Nothing.
Nothing. Because I don't get to check it off if I'm the one that said it. That's the rule. So disappointing. All right, hey, let's head over to our first article on, wow, this site has a lot going on it. Maybe it's because my ad blocker
I know.
is
The site looks nice on my page.
But wow. All right, techrepublic.com. CentOS 8 is finally here, for those of you who have been waiting. It's time to get the latest release of CentOS and find out what's to be had in the 8th iteration.
That's right. If you're familiar with CentOS, then a lot of this makes sense to you. But if you're not, you might not realize that CentOS is the open source free release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So if you want to run RHEL version 8, you've got to pay for it. Workstations like, I think, $350 a seat, and then servers $600 or $700 a seat, something like that. So it costs money. But it is open source. As a result, people are able to take it, recompile it, and release it as a free distro, and that's exactly what CentOS does. They do this with Red Hat's blessing. Actually, a lot of Red Hat employees work on the CentOS project. But because it is free, it's usually a bit behind. And in this case, it's 4 months. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 8 came out 4 months ago. CentOS version 8 just came out on September 24th, so a couple of days ago. It is out there. I've already got a couple of machines spun up with it. It's stable, full release. There are some new things in it that you might want to be aware of. Perhaps the biggest change that people are going to experience is DNF, the dandified Yum package manager that it used. Yum, or the Yellow Dog Update Manager, for years and years and years. They've been testing DNF in Fedora for a while, and now it is the main package manager found in CentOS 8. You'll definitely want to be aware of that.
What was the purpose of migrating? It seemed like Yum kind of fulfilled all my requirements. Why DNF?
So in the very beginning, Yum, it was great at installing packages. It was not great at tracking dependencies. And so all the dependency tracking stuff was hacked onto it afterwards, and it actually did a pretty bad job. The fact that it worked at all really was a testament to the developers putting a lot of extra time and effort into it. DNF was designed from the beginning to track dependencies better. That means that when you install a package, it's more likely to bring along the right packages with it, but also when you remove a package, it's more likely to remove the ones that shouldn't be there. It also has some security features in it, like it expects digitally signed updates by default to checksums. A little redundant there, but it does all that kind of stuff automatically, so it's just kind of like an all-around upgrade, and it's significantly faster than Yum.
So were they as far behind in things like patches or things like that? So if there's a vulnerability in Red Hat, and then they fix that and release a patch, does that kind of funnel down then?
So they're usually like less than 24 hours behind on security patches. Security patches come through really, really fast. It's all the feature things that come along with it. That's where they get a bit behind. And with CentOS, 4 months isn't that big of a deal. If you look, actually in the Tech Republic article, if you can make it past the ads to the very bottom, they list all the different major packages that have been updated now. So you'll see like Python 3.6, MariaDB 10.3, you've got Apache 2.4, Perl 5.26. So these are like the bigger updates, and those take longer to make it down to the CentOS project. But most people aren't in a hurry to get those anyway. And if you're working in some kind of scaling type environment, then CentOS is a great operating system because you can roll it out. It's 100% compatible with Red Hat, and that means you can switch back and forth between the two as part of your development cycle, and you end up with a great solution. So I use it quite a bit.
Well, speaking of development, let's take a look at our next article over on Phoronix. CentOS Stream announced as developer-forward distribution, rolling release of RHEL. So this means if I'm a developer, this is one of the better Linux distros for me to work on?
Maybe.
Okay. What kind of developer? Is that what makes the difference?
So, with Red Hat, you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is super stable, right? Red Hat works really hard to make sure that it is a stable and robust operating system. And that means it is several years behind on some features, right? Things like Python 3, it took a long time for Red Hat to make Python 3 the default version of Python on it. They have another operating system called Fedora. And Fedora is their bleeding edge, latest and greatest release. And it's free, but it's not considered stable. It's risky to run. Now, I'll tell you, I run Fedora quite a bit, and it's pretty stable. But they take their chances with Fedora. They test things out, and when they get it where something like a new feature is working stable, then they move that into Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Well, CentOS doesn't have that. With CentOS, it's just recompiled RHEL, and that's that. So they don't have that forward-looking operating system. They just rely on Fedora in a lot of cases. But that puts them kind of behind the 8 ball on new updates. So they've decided, and when I say they, it's really the people at Red Hat making this decision, that they're going to roll out a new distro called CentOS Stream. And CentOS Stream is going to be kind of like their Fedora. Now, it's not going to be as bleeding edge as Fedora. It's basically going to be the normal CentOS distro, but with a lot of underlying libraries updated to newer versions of PHP, newer versions of Apache, things that you wouldn't necessarily have in that base OS. And so if you're a developer that needs newer libraries but still wants to use CentOS, then CentOS Stream works for you, right? But if you're still shooting for rock-hard compatibility and stability, that's where you'll want the regular CentOS distro. I think they didn't do a great job with the naming convention, like just calling it CentOS Stream. It doesn't make a lot of sense to people. So I imagine that name's going to change, so this project's going to go away. But that's what it's named for now.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Debbie and Jesse or whatever. I just thought it was a special name for CentOS 8, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Yeah, it's SID.
Yeah,
right? Debbie and SID, that's their test platform, and it's always called SID. It's been called SID for several versions. It will never come out. It always then turns around and gets rolled into whatever their next release is.
So you're a developer, Justin. Do you develop in Linux at all? And if so, what
in some previous work, we actually had to use CentOS because our target platform was a RHEL deployment. It was an older version of RHEL, so we had to use CentOS as our development environment. I use Ubuntu a great deal just because package management that's just what I started in, so it was a little more ease of use. But since playing around with Amazon and doing those projects and things, I can easily switch between. I have to give CentOS another swing since most everything on that previous page was developer-centric, like PHP and stuff.
Yeah, well, the CentOS Stream is really kind of focused on that. But you're on a Mac right now, and I know a lot of the stuff that you mentioned you can do on a Mac just fine without having to run Linux at all, right?
Yeah, for the most part, you can. There's just something about... about the Linux. So, for instance, package management. I use Homebrew on my Mac, but I had to install Homebrew, and then Homebrew broke some stuff, like my Python distributions, actually.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, wait a minute, which one am I supposed to use? So then I just feel more comfortable with how all the pieces fit together. And for some of my development tools in Linux, most of it can be done on a Mac. I've just broken some things recently, so I was just like, just go over here. Also, I like the customizability, but that's just a tinker in me.
I know I used to always try and run the same version of Linux as I was using on the servers, and that way if I did something on my laptop, I knew it would work on the server. That's gotten harder to do these days because the servers are typically running, much, much smaller tool sets than what you have on your laptop, and so you couldn't test something on your laptop and know it'll work. I guess Docker fixes all that, right?
To some extent. We would use Docker with an older version of CentOS for our development purposes, but we still ran into some issues where they're like, well, actually, so this version of CentOS uses this version of Python, but the version of Rail that we paid for was a back patch of Python 2.7 into the... I was like, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, it was still off the rails, so to speak. So, yeah.
Ruby on Rails?
No. I stay away from that as much
Good
as possible.
tie-in, though.
Thank you.
Yeah. I threw it up. Is that on the bingo
No,
card?
I don't believe that is. That's not there. All right, switching gears now. So our interview I mentioned coming up, we're going to be talking about ransomware and things like that and how people are able to gain access to your systems. One of the ways that you can help prevent the impact of when that does happen is our next article over at tech.slashdot.org. 47% of organizations have cyber insurance, up from just 34% in 2017. And I've got to assume this is just people out there watching the news going, well, they spent $1 million to get their data back, where it seems like with the insurance, it seems maybe about 10% you're paying on the deductible, which, I mean, that's a lot of money still. That's a high deductible, but that's a lot of money saved. So,
when you reach this level of penetration, right, so 47% of organizations now have this. That shows you that cyber insurance has made that leap to being a generally accepted thing that companies are recognizing as something they have to have. And really, if you carry any customer data, which every company does, you need to have cyber insurance. It's not even really optional anymore.
So even if you say, hey, I got all my stuff off site and it's completely, air gapped, my backups are not, able to get to on my network, you still want to have this though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you're storing your backups off-site, how do you know that backup operator is trustworthy? How do you know the place where you're storing them is secure and safe? Somebody could break in and steal those tapes, and now you're left holding the bag. And the penalties inside of GDPR and other regulation have become so strong that people want to be able to defer that risk, if nothing else, than to cover the stupid personal credit reporting they give away to try and compensate you for horrible security practices.
Is that covered though in the insurance as well? Not just the
not
just the ransom, but the penalties you're going to face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So something happened Tuesday in my hometown. The county school system got hit with ransomware. And I was like, oh, no.
Both of the computers?
So it's funny that you say that. So they actually have a bunch of computers. We're talking about a county that is typically impoverished, very small, rural area.
Now you make me look bad.
Only five computers. They actually had monitoring in place, found it out, cut things off, and they did have cyber insurance, which blew my mind. I was like, hold up. We barely had computers, but they have cyber insurance. So I think that's probably an additional attestation to, hey, this is important. We should probably keep this. There's also some FERPA, which actually revolves around educational requirements for information. So I suspect a lot of organizations that have educational data also have started buying up cyber insurance.
Yeah, and I've seen where a lot of smaller school boards now are teaming up and forming consortiums. So you might have, like here in Florida, we have counties, and so you might have 4 or 5 counties that all team up so they can kind of join together their IT operation and operate at a bigger scale. So there's various things you can do. It is the difference between having like a professional IT director versus somebody who's amateur hour. And there's plenty of places that have had amateurs, and they're learning really quickly that you can't have an amateur in leadership. You can't have somebody who says, oh yeah, we're safe, everything's fine, because you get hit by ransomware and then you're just out of luck. So companies are recognizing that. I think if you don't have cyber insurance, you need to be learning about it. It's an important thing.
Yeah, and I heard they're going to use some of the payout to replace all those Packard Bell computers with
Compact.
new Pentium
Compact.
1s. Yeah.
Compact.
CRT monitors.
Gateway.
Oh, Gateway. Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Little cow boxes.
Yeah,
showing
little
up.
cow boxes.
Do you remember when Gateway was the best?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, if somebody had a Gateway computer, you're like, holy crap, they got some money.
Man, my friend's mom, I remember, like, yeah, we paid like $3,200 for this computer. I was like, this is amazing. That is not true.
It's a different time.
Yeah.
All right, our next article is over at mspoweruser.com. Ex-Microsoft employee explains quality issues with Windows 10 development. And I assume, since he's an ex-employee, he's talking about how great the quality is of Windows 10 development. Is that correct?
Well, I was expecting to read like how they got fired for doing poor code development and that's solving the problem. But instead, there have been a lot of news articles this year. In fact, so many that I've stopped reporting on them here on the podcast, where people say that the Windows code quality has been declining over the last couple of years. And what they're citing for a reference are a lot of these upgrade bugs that when a big update comes out, there'll be a couple of systems, and it'll usually be like systems with an AMD processor and this particular video card where the Windows update process black screens and you got to format and reinstall, right? So that's bad. You don't want that to happen, right? But there's over 100 million Windows 10 machines out there. And if 20 of them black screen, it's like such an insignificant number that it's not even worth reporting on. But in our new media, it gets reported on. So I've been really curious, like, are there actual bad coding practices going on at Microsoft? Is their code quality declining? Or is this a matter of we just have better visibility into the data, right? Like with Windows 10, they introduced that whole new feature where it reports diagnostic data back to Microsoft, the user trajectory and how they're clicking through and doing things and what leads up to the crash. So Microsoft has better visibility than ever in that, which means they know more accurately than ever how many crashes occurred and identify it. I kind of feel like the code quality is better. Like, at least for me, Windows 10 is more stable than previous versions. And I think this is just a case of us having more access to data than ever before. But what this person goes on to explain is, hey, I used to work there, and that most of the best developers at Microsoft saw the writing on the wall and moved over to the cloud projects, over to Azure, because that's where the money is, right? So they wanted to get attached to those big projects, and that just left the lower end developers, the more junior devs, to continue working on Windows 10. Now, I'm not buying that story, but that's what they're saying, and that there were some layoffs and some other things, and basically ever since 2015, they have not had their best coders working on the desktop operating system.
And just for full clarity, the individual quoted is named Barnacles. So
Barnacles?
Barnacles, yeah, he's a YouTuber. I've seen a couple of his videos. Also, I do want to point out, when you're developing for a particular platform, trying to see every possible combination of hardware and knowing what's going to happen, that's a fairly large undertaking, and it may be skewed just by reporting or, hey, look, AMD processors with, these Radeon graphics cards or whatever it may be. I've been in a hardware game for a while. They were just black screening. Yeah, but what about all the other ones? Right?
Yeah.
I could tell you for a fact, when I installed Linux on my computer that I bought, I didn't have video for a little while, so it was pretty good with Windows on it, so we're all good.
Yeah, and Mac OS has had some high-profile bad updates and stuff, so I don't know. I don't know there necessarily is a problem here. I think we just are more quickly acknowledging what's going on. But either way, nobody likes a crash, so that's what's going on.
And if you have 16 minutes and 25 seconds free, you can go ahead and watch the video that's posted on that page. And Don, if you click on it, if you click play, you'll notice he's got the same little Stream Deck, or what's it called there?
The Elgato Stream Deck. Yeah, the little macro buttons in the background there. Yeah,
you
I
would
love
pronounce
that
that Barnacles, right? Is that how you
I thought it was Barnacle.
Or I don't know.
Barnacules.
Barnacules.
Isn't that how you spell Barnacle?
Oh, his name was Jerry.
All I know.
Oh yeah,
look at that.
Jerry.
All I know is that he looks like Hank Hill.
He worked on Vista.
It's like Hank Hill in actual human form, I think. All right. Our next article, though, is over at Reuters. It says, "You have the right to be forgotten." Oh, too late. By Google, but only in Europe. So I assume that's because of GDPR. That's kind of one of the offshoots of that, and we don't have that here.
So that was a big deal. Was with the initial release of GDPR's terms, one of the things it said was that a citizen of the EU has a right to be forgotten. So if they do something crazy and ends up going viral and it's in the Google search results, they can submit a ticket and say, Google, you need to remove that and get it out of there. It actually does nothing to remove the source of the data. It just gets you out of the search engine results. So kind of a silly thing, but that's what GDPR tried to do. The problem here is if you're somebody like Google that's multinational, do you have to purge the search results for that person from your European searches and your US searches and your Russian searches and so on? Or is it just the European ones? And what Google was saying was, look, your right to be forgotten is effectively taking this data away from people outside of the EU. So you're basically exerting governance over the world, and that's not okay. And so that went, it was going to go to EU court, which is kind of like People's Court.
I believe that's what it is.
Judge Judy showed up, and we were like, oh.
But the council for the EU, like their own people, basically said, look, Google's right. We shouldn't challenge this. And so they finally just came out. So it actually didn't go to a full trial. And they said, look, you're right. The right to be forgotten will apply to your servers and searches that originate in the EU and not outside of it.
So I misunderstood part of this. So when I say that my data, you're saying that means pulling anything that relates to me out of the search engine. That doesn't mean, I thought it meant like my data that they have, that they've tracked me across the internet and the cookies and things that they've stored for ad remarketing or data I may have given them before as a Gmail user or anything like that. Is that
no, so that, part of this? I mean, that affects you personally. That's your PII, right. And so that has to stay in the EU. There's GDPR rules that cover that. But this one was more targeted towards, for example, let's say that there was an armed robbery here in Gainesville, right? And the culprit or
the suspect.
There we go. They release a sketch, and it looks like you know, it's
just a white piece of paper.
Yeah,
with a beard,
like a red line across the top.
Okay.
And so they just go, and how many bearded, redheaded people do we have here in Gainesville?
At least two.
Two in this office.
At least two.
So you get arrested, and your name gets thrown on TV, right? Well, Google's going to pick that up, so it's in the search engine results. And so people searching for your name are going to come across, well, you got arrested. But within hours, they realize you're not the right person. They release you, and that's it. So it was all just a false alarm. But those search results are still going to be there. People searching for your name will find this inaccurate information.
Just ask Richard Jewell.
What happened with Richard?
He was the guy from the Olympic bombing. He was the security guard.
That's right.
He was accused of it originally. And I mean, if you search his name now, that's all.
That's
that
what
comes
you
up,
get. Yeah. So what GDPR's idea was to say, like, you could tell Google, hey, you got to get rid of these results. That's old and whatever. I have the right to be forgotten, and they would remove it. Now the thing is, if they removed it everywhere, no one in the world would see that. Well, here in the U.S., we've decided that's okay. It's okay for us to get false information. so you know, it's part of our freedom of speech. You know, that you can say whatever you want. So now, if you were to go to Europe and actually be at a European IP address and perform a Google search for your name, you won't see those articles. But if you leave Europe and you come over here to the U.S. and you do that same search, you'll see those articles right there.
Yeah, you have the right to be forgotten is also what my dad said to me when I left for college.
That's probably some of the most depressing things I've heard on this podcast.
All right, moving over to Engadget now. Chrome update prevents some Macs from rebooting properly. And, this has been updated. There's a fix, though you'll have to be comfortable with the command line. I am not.
Yeah. So,
Don, can you help fix my computer?
This is a crazy one. So, several users of Mac Pros, like the really expensive, the trash cans, right? You know, they're expensive systems. Yeah. Started reporting their systems wouldn't reboot. If you try to reboot, they would just hang.
Say, no thanks.
And they wouldn't reboot. And at first, people were critical of Apple. Like, what is Apple doing? And this is their expensive computer. You'd think they'd make it work, but no, they're doing garbage code and it won't reboot. Well, as people started to dig deeper into the problem, it turned out that it's actually Google's fault, that a bad update that went out for Google Chrome was causing these Macs to fail to reboot. Now, at that point, people started looking at Google like, oh, you're the ones who screwed this up. Well, then it goes a step further. And when they finally figured out exactly what was going on, it turned out that the majority of these users were using a product called the Avid Media Composer, which is a video editor. Avid Video is like really high quality video images, thus the
which is
more
why it's the
expensive
pro
Macs.
computers. Yeah.
And apparently, the way Avid Media Composer accesses the video card is blocked by the security features of macOS. So in order to run it, you have to disable system integrity protection. You have to turn that off to allow the Avid Media Composer to be able to access the video card. And when you disable those security features, a bug in Google Chrome was allowed to corrupt part of the operating system that it wouldn't normally have been allowed to corrupt. So it didn't affect normal people. Like the bug was there, but it didn't affect us because macOS was protecting us, right? But if you turned off the protection features, Google would hose up your system, and that would be that. So most of them were users that were using this media software. Others were users who had just disabled system integrity protection because they're stupid. And I mean, wait, that's not. What's a nicer way to say that? They're security challenged.
They were ill-informed. They were. No, they were stupid. I think I might stay with that
that's
one.
pretty much it.
The update does say that Avid Media, or the Avid says Media Composer does not require turning off SIP. But did confirm that,
that must be the
Chrome's
update,
updater caused the problem. That's good. It's not us. It's Google. I saw them.
Well, now I'm curious, like why all these people would have instructions to disable SIP, which is a absolutely bad idea. Where did they get that instruction from? If Avid says you don't need it,
maybe an older version, right? Because the trash can one's been out for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe it was an older version that you had to turn that off, and then they're like, we found a way around it. Real quick question. Do you think Google's going to file a claim against itself for this to be forgotten?
in Europe, probably just in Europe.
Okay.
Actually, do
corporations?
companies? Are companies people in Europe?
That sounds like an American thing only.
Yeah, the
I
people
remember
here.
we learned that in the Mitt Romney years, I think, is when I first heard that.
Did I tell you, slightly off topic here, about the bumper sticker I saw about companies being people?
Yeah.
It was hilarious. It said, "I'll believe that companies have rights when Texas executes one of them."
That's not funny.
And I thought, you know what? That's a good point. Like,
with rights come responsibilities.
Yeah.
Like the right to be forgotten when your update feature
Because we have talked
disables
on
a $30,000 computer.
We have talked on this very podcast about how companies are not always held to the same standards as individual people, or the individual people within companies are not held accountable for criminal behavior.
Equifax.
So that could be one. All right, well, that's fun. Hey, let's head over to our next article now. ZDNet.com has this one. Azure Sentinel, Microsoft's cloud-based SIEM. See, I asked you how to pronounce it, and then I said like 4 wrong pronunciations that I was going to say, and then I forgot which one was right.
Yeah, and that's why you're a terrible learner.
Azure Sentinel, Microsoft's cloud-based SIEM, hits general availability. Pricing starts at $2.46 per gigabyte of ingested data. Well, that's a great deal.
It actually is.
It is.
So if you've ever set up a SIEM, it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's a lot of effort.
I've never said SIEM. How would I?
Well, see,
I would not have said
You don't have to pronounce something in order to use it.
See, now you can even outsource the pronunciation to the cloud, and it's all done for you right through Microsoft Azure. They've been testing this one for a while, so it's actually been kind of out there in a limited beta release. Now it's an official product available in Azure, and it is ready to run and start collecting your logs. So basically, you take all your servers, your switches, your routers, whatever devices it is you want to protect, and you point their logging up into Azure, and their SIEM collects it, indexes it, makes it where you can search and make sense out of all the logging data that you're generating. This is an incredibly useful tool, not just for security, but even for like developers, network admins, troubleshooting. It's incredibly handy. SIEMs are normally very expensive. A lot of systems like Splunk, they charge per message, or they'll charge based on these huge payloads. What Microsoft did is they chose to go a slightly different way and measure it in size. So for every gigabyte of ingested data, it costs $2.46. Now, that sounds like it could get expensive fast, but remember, log messages are usually just text, lines of text, right? The entire text of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and apparently Siri is going to help us, the entire text of the Encyclopedia Britannica is like 1.2 megabytes, I think.
Wow.
So that's the level of text that we're talking about here. Tons and tons. And so you could feed quite a bit of logging in there, and it's $2.50. So it's pretty affordable as far as stuff like that is concerned, and just a great system. They've got a cool screenshot for people who are actually watching where you can see, like if you're monitoring a web server, the origins people are coming from laid out geographically based on times and so on. It's fully searchable and like way easier than trying to stand up an elk stack or something yourself where you got to worry about the clustering and the database backend and the front end and keeping the data secure. Here, Microsoft just handles it all for us and renders it right here. And you can even use it if your infrastructure is entirely in somebody else's cloud. Like I could have all AWS deployments, but then be shipping the logs over here to the Azure seam. Really, really cool stuff.
But what if I like my log files to be high-res PNG files? Does it still allow that to happen?
I doubt it would ingest that. I doubt it has an OCR piece.
Yeah, it would. It would definitely cost me a bunch of money.
But you could probably write a system, and then you could charge a certain amount per gigabyte, and you'd get rich.
Oh yeah.
If there were enough dumb people out there.
Yeah.
What?
I like my stuff in PNGs and PDFs.
It's pretty.
Super
pretty.
You could write a plugin for Avid Media Composer that takes
updates,
log files and converts them to PNG.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like this author too. He writes for somewhere I can't remember. Do you remember?
You tried.
Remember where-
I was going to try to get you
Where
again.
he writes for?
No, I remember drastically because I've now started
Told me
looking
last
for the
week.
authors because they're usually guest authors.
Yeah.
For those of you out there, it's a buzzword bingo word. I'm not going to say it. Peter might though.
I know. I was fishing for a word earlier when I brought up Docker, and you didn't go for it. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Docker, tell us
Oh,
more.
you almost got me.
All right, our final article today is over at arstechnica.com. High severity vulnerability in vBulletin is being actively exploited. Devs push a fix for the flaw, but hackers are still hitting unpatched sites. So this is one of those where, I mean, was this a 0 day, or is this something that they reported?
So, it's sort of a 0 day. Basically, there's an exploit, right? That is available. I'm just going to.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask. Do I
back.
get to count it if it's the past tense verb?
So, pretty much every version of vBulletin 5 has been vulnerable to this, and since the beginning, since 5.0, right? So this has been around a while. And there's a few security researchers, somewhere in the article, one of them is quoted as saying that they've known about this for 3 years. So that means people have known about it in one form or another. So that kind of makes it not a 0 day. But it was just announced. Like somebody released a proof of concept or a way to exploit the code, and it was posted anonymously on, I don't know, some site. It actually doesn't say where it came from, but basically anonymously on a site, somebody posted how to exploit it. And so now attackers have taken it and they started leveraging it. And the thing is, it's super easy to test a vBulletin server to see if it's vulnerable to this. And once you've tested it and you know it's vulnerable, you can then basically just start throwing commands at the vBulletin server and it will run it. And so it's really, really, really bad. This is like the worst kind of thing you can have happen to your vBulletin. I'll say a few things on this. First off, like vBulletin has a major exploit release at least once a year. Like they have just terrible security track record. They're always really good about pushing a fix out really fast, but I've had to maintain a couple of vBulletin servers over the years. You have to apply updates daily. Like you have to stay on top of it and apply updates as quickly as possible because they come out like this pretty frequently. And vBulletin servers all over the globe are getting slammed right now because this vulnerability is so easy to test for and so easy to apply. Those servers are just getting compromised like crazy.
Yeah, and I was curious how many people are using this. But this doesn't necessarily give that, but it does suggest that about 10,000 sites are still running vulnerable versions. So this is definitely something that's affecting a fair bit. So,
and I want to challenge that number. I can't imagine there are 10. I can't believe that there's 10,000 vBulletin servers out there.
Well, this says version 5X makes up less than 7% of active installations.
I can't believe.
But then
that there's-
says that's 10,000.
I have a
people.
hard time believing there are 10,000 any version of vBulletin
Yeah,
out
'cause-
there. Like, how many bulletin boards can there be? And I'm not talking about individual boards. Like, this is the entire server. They're
But
telling me-
isn't this one of those easy install apps? If you get like DreamHost or HostGator or whatever from like cPanel, you can go,
is
boom, I want to be vBulletin.
Is it? It's a paid app.
Maybe it is, but
Or
it's
is
like
there-
a one-click install.
Wait, is
I
there a
think.
free version of vBulletin? Maybe that's the deal here. Because we always had to buy it. Yeah, it's paid $250. If there are 10,000, and I'm going with their lowest number, right? So if there are 10,000 vBulletin servers out there, they've made good money for having a pretty mediocre product.
I tell you what,
Great
gives
security.
me hope. Gives me hope. Actually, if you look at this article, if you look at this, it's funny. This is one of those. It gives a similar choice. It said this looks something like this, and there's an eval statement in that PHP code, which blows my mind because this is something that you do a static code analysis. I mean, any of those tools will go, hey, this is a possible command injection site. You should make sure this data is sanitized. Like, it'll flag that. So they're talking about people are using that to do like sed and rewrite certain PHP files and all kinds of stuff. I don't know how it went unnoticed for 3 years by other people and then shenanigans.
Yeah,
eval.
it's
bad.
crazy. And, because it's executing the commands as the service account for vBulletin, you have full access to the vBulletin SQL database, so you can pull all the user data, email addresses, things like that. You can trigger it to start sending spam, super easy through forum notifications. Even if people have opted out from the mailing list, you can send it as a system announcement, which will go to everybody. You can change message bodies. I mean, you really do whatever you want to that system, assuming that it isn't patched. So the number one message here is if you support vBulletin, you absolutely need to update right now. You don't even have time to test. Like, you just need to roll the update out and hope it works. And if you haven't patched, you may already be exploited. So you need to double check, look for new administrative users, look for changes in your system configuration and so on. Those are all very real things that can happen. I will say that as far as bulletin boards are concerned, vBulletin is pretty powerful. Like, it lets you do a lot of stuff, but they just do not have a good security track record.
So would you say that there is an actionable solution here?
I would, absolutely. Yes.
No. Would you say that, please?
Is that like the last word you need?
That
Let me
is
just make
gorgeous.
sure
Dang it.
Thank
that
you.
it doesn't. Oh, I don't have actionable.
Yeah,
It's not even
I
on
know.
my
I looked at your card before I asked, and I
But
looked
I
at
did
his
just
card
say
to
it
see
for you,
if it
so
was going to
there
be.
you
Oh,
go.
you did. Fantastic.
I am one word away from winning, but nobody wants to say my word.
No, we're not going to do that. But maybe we'll say it in the interview here because we're doing this interview now. We're going to be joined by Joshua Crumbaugh, who, like I said, is the chief hacker and CEO at PeopleSec. We're going to talk about just how easy it is to get people to give up their information through phishing, social engineering, and all that fun stuff, and what to do about it once that happens. So let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back with that interview right after this on Technado.
Are you a career changer or a budding tech pro who's looking to start their career in IT? I'm Wes Bryan, and along with my fellow IT Pro TV edutainer Cherokee Boos, we've just shot a new show just for you. Each week, we'll dive into topics to help you launch your career in tech. Watch how to get started in IT on YouTube now. Just head to youtube.com/ITProTV to watch and look for new episodes every Saturday at 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time.
All right, welcome back to Technado, and we're going to be joined by a guest now all the way from Huntsville, Alabama. We have Joshua Crumbaugh, who is the chief hacker and CEO at PeopleSec. How you doing, Joshua?
I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you, and thank you so much for joining us. And for those of us that don't know about PeopleSec, can you give us a little bit of background about what you guys do there?
Yeah, so we're a security awareness company. We really focus on the human element of cybersecurity. And so we developed the world's most advanced anti-phishing training platform. And we brought AI into it to create a system that would phish you according to where you're most susceptible. And so until you're no longer susceptible. And that's sort of our claim to fame. We do a lot of other stuff like, we're known for some of our social engineering feats that we've pulled off during some of our consulting assessments. But our big thing is stopping your users from clicking on phishes.
So I'm always curious on this because we've been banging the drum for years about how end user training is kind of like the single most important thing in IT security because they're your weakest link.
Yeah.
I would assume, since we have massive breaches reported every single week, that companies are doing better about training their employees. Have you seen a pickup in that business? Are a lot more organizations doing a better job with end user training?
So, I mean, yes, I have, but let's be honest. We're talking about 90% of our problem, and we're finally up to 1% of the total cybersecurity budget that's being spent on end user training. So we have a long way to go, but certainly there has been an uptick, and I think it's in large part because finally we're creating solutions that are actually delivering results. And historically, logging into an LMS once a year, you weren't going to get any results off of that. And so I think that's part of the reason it hasn't been given the amount of attention that it probably should, because as we all know, I mean, this is the biggest problem facing us all.
So you said something there in the beginning. You said we'll phish you until it doesn't work anymore, basically. So is that what an engagement looks like for you? Is it kind of open-ended where, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to find some weaknesses, we're going to tell you about the weaknesses, then do you do the training as well at that point after that fact, and then come back and try again and see what's happened?
Well, so our technology, we call it our next-gen human firewall. It's done on an annual subscription basis. And so what it's going to do is, let's say with you're more likely to click on a security themed phish, since we're talking about security here today, I'll just assume. And so our system would identify that you're most likely to click on that phish, and then begin beating up on you with that exact type of phish until you're trained, you're aware of that type of threat, and you're no longer clicking on those. So it's really an ongoing thing because phishing threats are constantly changing, and this is designed to identify your specific risk when you have it and address it very quickly.
So you said that, all right, you clicked on this, we know what's going on, we're going to teach you about it. Is there a group of individuals, I kind of call myself out here as a developer, are there a group of individuals that tend to be a little more difficult to move along in this arena, or how do you mitigate against that?
You must have watched one of my talks if you're calling yourself out there. Yes, there are groups of individuals that are more likely to click on phishes than any other departments. We found that developers and sales teams are some of the worst at clicking on things. So, not trying to give you a hard time, but definitely developers are very likely to click on phishes. Now, what's interesting is we found that sales and developers, they don't click on the same types of phishes. So developers are way more likely to click on what we would define as a business communications themed phish. So something that appears to come from the internal company, something they have to do. Whereas salespeople are very, very likely to click on the social media themed phishes. And so while they're two of the most susceptible departments in an organization, they're not clicking on the same things.
Now, I'm curious, from the attacker's perspective, what is their end game? What are they normally seeking to get? Is it just trying to get anybody's credentials possible to get a foothold, or is there something that they're targeting more often than not?
Well, I think it really depends on the exact type of attack. So some of the times they're phishing you to try and steal your credentials, like you mentioned. Other times they're just trying to get you to run malware. So, and then other times they're just trying to get you to give them money. So maybe it's a fake invoice they want you to send, or they're pretending to be the CFO out traveling on business and saying, "Hey, I need you to urgently wire me this $50,000." And so, I mean, there are quite literally, tens of thousands of different types of phishing attacks. Of course, the most common ones are getting you to run malware, getting you to give up your credentials, or getting you to give up money. And that's, a good 98% of the total phishing attacks that we see.
Now, I don't know if I'm an outlier or not, but I receive at least one phishing attack a day, usually more, just flooding my inbox. So it's kind of become like my email box has become a signal to noise ratio that's obscene. But I'm curious because I know a lot of people are clicking on these. They are effective forms of attacks. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going on. What's the most egregious failure of security you've seen? Like how bad have you seen somebody get hit by one of these?
The most egregious failure in security that I've seen was not a phishing attack. Honestly, it was a help desk employee that gave me domain admin credentials over the phone. that was one of the worst ones I've seen. But another time, me and a team of mine, so I come from an ethical hacking background, and we will often, as part of a penetration test or red team assessment, we will phish users. Well, this was a pen test. And so we had sent this phishing email to something like 800 users, which we wouldn't do in a red team, but in a pen test, we have limited time. And anyway, long story short, we ended up getting something like 2,400 backdoors or shells on systems. And so this phish that we had sent actually went viral, and we had to shut down our command and control when we had shells popping in from companies that we weren't targeting and individuals' home computers, because they started forwarding this phish or this phish that we sent to loved ones, significant others, things like that. And it got out of control, and we were shutting it down. We were worried we were going to get in trouble because there was a lot of shells popping in from out of scope sources, let's say.
Well, I've never really thought about that. If you craft a phishing email and send it to somebody and it's convincing enough, they could potentially forward it somewhere else. And yeah.
I have to ask though, what was in the email? Yeah. Right? That's the important question here that I've never went. You know who else needs to give some gift cards? My mom. So, or maybe you can't.
Was
talk
it like
about
sign a petition or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think sign a petition would work. This particular company, they were in the middle of a merger, and so we sent out a notice from HR saying that we were deploying a worst of both worlds benefits policy.
All right, so sign up for the benefits.
Well, right.
Fantastic. But just stepping back a second, am I the only one when he said human firewall that just pictures a line of people outside on fire?
I was just piles of them. Just piles of people.
Well, and it was a next-gen human firewall. It's important.
It was like Game of Thrones when they attacked Winterfell. Anyway.
I'm still surprised that marketing's not in those departments that click a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, no, marketing is right up there.
Oh, okay.
I can say...
I was just giving you number one and number two.
Oh, okay.
Marketing is a close third, for sure.
Well, Don says he gets one phishing email a day. I'm in the marketing side personally. I've never gotten a phishing email.
They're all legit.
No,
but I got to go buy some gift cards.
I click on everything and nothing's happened to me. So, but I'm not allowed on the network anymore. But that's a different story. So I did have a question. I know we've been talking about phishing up to this point, but I did watch one of your talks online, and you do some more like physical security, physical pen testing as well, and social engineering stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about the techniques you use there?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that we do on the professional services is we're going to come in, we'll test your security through penetration testing and red teaming, which I'm not going to get into what the difference between them is right now, unless you want me to. But so one of those things that we're really proficient at is testing against social engineering attacks. And so one of the weakest areas in all of our organizations is our people. I can't tell you how many companies know it and they just don't want to test it because they don't want the results. But we'll actually come in and we test those things. And so as a part of that, I think the talk that you heard was how to rob a bank over the phone. And this was where I was talking through how I was actually able to get a bank vice president on the phone, get him to schedule a time for me to actually come in that next week. And in doing so, at one point, I was able to gain so much access to the bank and their facilities that I was able to, unaccompanied, walk into the vault, take a selfie with a pile of their money and put it in the report. And they never even had a clue that had happened. But so, yeah, we do things like that. We'll even test physical security. Not in Iowa, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're following that story.
Saw that,
I was getting ready to ask. I was like, so what do you do to make sure you don't end up in
You have
prison?
a scope of work.
Oh.
Right?
I mean, I don't. They had a scope of work, from what I understand. Everything was correct, but then politicians got involved, and that always causes issues. But But no, so we'll actually physically break in. You'd be amazed at how easy it is to gain access to these places in the middle of the night. I will say, had we been in Iowa, I like to think we wouldn't have been caught, and so we might not have made the news.
That's a good point. So obviously the scope of work that they gave you in that bank example, they didn't say, "Hey, see if you can go get into the vault." So how do you know when to keep going, or at what point do you say, okay, we've got enough, this is time to write the report and give the results?
So, I mean, part of my job when I'm doing ethical hacking is to demonstrate the impact. They're hiring me to come in and show what an attack will look like, and part of the goal is to help their defenders be better at it. But then another part of the goal is to demonstrate or be better at detecting. But the other part is demonstrating what might happen if they were attacked, and really demonstrating that impact. And so, no, they didn't say try and get at our bank vault, but they want to know what could happen. And so when opportunity strikes and we're able to get into a bank vault, maybe a casino money cage, things like that, of course we're going to do that, because that really demonstrates what it would look like if the bad guys were to actually target you. And so keep in mind that what we do for a living, ethical hackers, our job is to emulate the bad guy. And I've never heard of any bad guys stopping and saying, well, that's outside of scope or rules of engagement. And so, yes, there's a little bit of just sort of in the moment deciding what is acceptable and what's not. Obviously, we're not trying to cause any disruptions or anything like that, but it's very important to know if somebody could gain access to your vault, and you might never know. And so that's where we really come into play. And so there's a little bit of what we call dynamic scoping sometimes. Other times we'll have clients or our trusted agents sort of on speed dial, and we'll just reach out to them and say, hey, I think we can do this. Is it okay if we actually try? And more often than not, they say, yeah, go for it.
Now, we've heard about troubles, right here in the United States, just in between various states and how they handle this. Do you do international testing as well? And what kind of complexities does that bring in?
That's a great question. We're talking with a few clients in Europe right now, and we have not actually jumped into international testing yet. I would expect that we're probably going to do our first international test within, 3 to 5 months here. But no, that's something that we're involving lawyers in, because this is, it's one thing to do this in the United States. It's a completely different thing to, go to other countries where we're not as familiar with the laws. And so, for sure, we're hiring attorneys and having them go through everything long before we step foot on foreign soil and do this sort of testing.
I'm still reeling from the fact that you got inside a bank, or you actually set a casino money cage. I don't know. For some reason, I'm just thinking Ocean's 11. You got duffel bags. Maybe that's a horrible movie reference.
Oh, I mean, we didn't take duffel bags of money. That would be out of scope.
It's a small line there.
Just cargo pants.
Oh, I got you. Just cargo pants. If you can carry it on your person, you're good. No external bags.
Scotty vest.
But it does bring up right when people think of hacking or getting inside. They think of, I got the glasses and I'm in a basement and there's computers around me. But that seems like a totally different skill set than the individual who is able to convince someone to let them walk in, right? Is that something that you find few people have, like you're one versus the other, like you're highly technical versus social, or are the best ones, I have this nice union of the two?
That's a great question. Honestly, I wouldn't say it's one or the other. I know of some great social engineers. There is a little bit of one or the other. But my experience is a lot of the best social engineers were some of the most socially awkward people growing up. And those are often the nerds that were on computers. They spent their lunches at the library during high school teaching themselves to code, or at least that's what I did anyway. But I bring that up because a lot of the best social engineers, everything social is a learned science to them. And because of that, it's very easy to apply the science to be able to get things to happen, even though they're naturally very socially awkward people. So, a lot of really great social engineers are also very good with the technical as well. But not all of them. I mean, there's some people that only do technical, and then there's a lot of social engineers that can't do the technical. Fortunately, on our side, most of our team are really cross-domain in terms of their expertise and can do both and do it fairly well.
And for those of you just tuning in, we are interviewing Joshua Crumbaugh from PeopleSec, or CEO of PeopleSec. And I want to change gears a little bit. We've been talking about pen testing, some of the different things that you do to evaluate a company's security. We've been talking a lot about phishing. But one question we get from a lot of our viewers are people that are interested in kind of following that same career path, getting into cybersecurity. So how did you end up in the position where, I mean, you're not just a pen tester, you're the CEO, you kind of run your team. So how did you get from just regular person into that job role?
Well, so I actually started out in tech, and then I ended up getting out of it. I got sick of IT. Didn't like running cables, climbing under desks. And then so I tried development for a little while. Really wasn't a fan of having these arbitrary deadlines put on me to write some code that no one talked to me about, the complications of it before they said, oh, we can get that done in a week. So I finally got out of technical and spent the better part of a decade in marketing, where I also never got a single fish. I clicked on everything I got.
See, it's not just me. Yeah.
That actually explains how you were able to convince that person to get in that bank when you were from marketing.
And he was a developer for a little while. So
yeah, too shady. The union of shadiness is.
He didn't say sales.
Yeah, well, this is true.
Well,
but yeah, so I was getting bored with marketing, and I was asked to, because I was one of the more technical guys at this company, and so somebody says, "Hey, we have this Excel document that's locked, and we need to get into it. Can you help?" And so I was able to get into it, and in the process, I discovered at the time Backtrack Linux and penetration testing. And no joke, I went into my boss's office that day, and I said I quit, and I'm going to go be an ethical hacker. He sort of laughed at me and thought I was crazy. And well, 6 months later, I got my first job as an ethical hacker, and that quickly led to joining one of the best teams in the country, which led to me running it. And not long after that, I started my own company because I saw that there was a problem with human security, and that no one was really focusing on it, and that a majority of our industry was still focusing on and looking for technical solutions to a human problem.
I thought you were going to say, and a week later, I hacked the guy that laughed at me. That would have been a great ending to that.
He was the CEO of a bank. Weird coincidence.
My favorite part of the bank story, though, because you mentioned you were in IT and I kind of got bored with that, is when you did get scheduled to come in and physically install malware on everyone's computers, got into it and said, God, do I really have to do this on everybody's machine now? This is why I got out of IT, because I got to pull the fire alarm or something to get out of here. This is crazy. But I'm curious. Did you have? I mean, that's one great example we've given. Are there any other really fun ones that you can share? Interesting stories, and obviously changing names to protect the guilty.
Oh, I mean, yeah, this is the craziest job in the world. One of my favorite stories is when I had come up with what I consider, or I deem now as, the denial of thinking attack. And so I'm in this law firm, and we got domain admin very, very quickly on the assessment. So all that means is we had the keys to the kingdom. We could do anything. And so we're one of the things they wanted to find out was, can you gain access to our data center? And so I, with us having full access or full keys of the kingdom, I said, well, this is easy. I'm just going to go hack the calendar of the receptionist out front and send her a few emails saying that I'm there to do some technical support. I'll walk in, she'll let me right into the data center. And it worked exactly like we planned on it working. The issue is that once I got in there, they had this really cool little security, inexpensive security tool. And it was just a pinhole camera on the ceiling that took a picture of everybody that entered the data center and emailed it to all of IT. So not long later, this IT guy comes in and he says, well, who are you and why are you in here? And I hadn't planned on IT catching me. So I give him some story. I think it was about latency. He leaves. And then he comes back a little bit later with a bunch of people who are obviously not from IT, because clearly they work out a lot more than most of us in IT. And so I realize I'm being bounced. And at that point, as they're sort of escorting me out, I'm worried I'm going to have to use that letter of authorization. I'd never used it before. And so I just put this on this really big sort of, for lack of a better term, like Jersey Shore style scene. And I entertained them because there was like the halls were lined up with people, and I could tell that they were looking for a show. And so I thought, well, why don't I just give them a show? And in doing so, was able to get out of there scot-free without getting caught, even though I was caught. But there's so many different stories like that. We regularly break into places in the middle of the night, and just this morning I was talking with a client, and they were like, "Hey, did you start the pen test?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, we've been in your network for a few weeks. We've definitely started it. Did you not notice anything?" And so, we get to have a lot of fun in what we do, and more importantly, help our clients become a lot more secure and find not just their technical, but their physical and their human vulnerabilities all at the same time.
Well, people love hearing all these stories, and I know you have some speaking events coming up. Why don't you let us know where you're going to be?
Yeah, there's an event in August in Oklahoma City. I'm the opening keynote for. We've also got in October the Public Power Association. I'm doing a keynote there, doing one for Pulse Networks for a bunch of bankers. I'm speaking at some event at MIT and guest lecturing at Auburn University as well. So it's a busy month in October. I think I'm even going up to Canada to speak at some health services thing for the Saskatchewan government. So.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, when you get into the government stuff, make sure, you don't want to get arrested over there either in Canada.
They're very nice.
I mean, it can't be too bad.
Yeah, they'll apologize.
We're real sorry for doing this. So you got to come with us, though.
Here's your
I
poutine.
grew up in the far north, so I speak Canadian as well.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, if people do want to engage with you guys and find out a little bit more about maybe doing something like this at their business, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Just reach out, or you can visit PeopleSec.org or email us at info@peoplesec.org, and we're happy to get you some more information and chat with you. Otherwise, you can call us at 844-40-FISH.
Sounds good. Thank you. Oh, is that
wait a minute.
Right?
I have a hard distrust of what he just said. Right? He's like, you can just call us with your credit card. Is what I heard.
Do not trust this man. Well, thank you so much.
We don't hack you unless you pay us to hack you. That's a guarantee.
Well, we don't
if you get our credit card number, isn't that indirectly hacking us to pay you?
He doesn't give you the report unless you pay.
Oh, that's a good business
we had a
model.
client one time during the kickoff call. Our project manager, he says, so what's the billing information so we know where to send the invoice? And their CISO, he says, well, if you're as good as you say you are, then you can just pay yourself. It was all of 8 hours before we got a frantic call saying, do not pay yourself.
But you said.
That's too many zeros. Uh-oh.
Hey, Joshua, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And hopefully maybe we can have you on sometime in the future after you have gotten access to Justin's machine and everything here. So.
I've been clicking on every email since this started.
You did that? Okay, yeah. You've been doing. Oh, it's a blue screen there. Look at that.
That's crazy.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joshua, and thank you everyone for tuning in. But stay tuned. We have more Technado coming up right after this.
I'm James Packer. I'm the General Manager of Kirk ISS based in the Cayman Islands. We look after IT for banks, governments and various other organisations around the Caribbean. IT Pro TV for me first was a personal subscription. Used it for a little while, started to like it, then found out there was a business version. I started off with a small team there of about 20 staff. By the time I finished, I had 110 engineers in the field and we had dozens of IT Pro accounts with the guys training, and last year alone they passed over 40 certs by using the online training. One thing I can say that I can't say for any others is IT Pro TV. I've seen it make people pass exams, help them with the virtual labs, the practice tests, and the ability to check your team are actually doing it. So it helps you to make sure you're getting return on your investment. One thing I particularly like about it, it lets you know how many times they've taken the test and whether they failed or not. I can watch even if they're downloading, so even if they're watching offline, I know they've had a go at it. I built this structure whereas each time they passed an exam, they would get extra money within their salary. But it would also work invertly. If they didn't work towards it, they would lose their training account to go to another member of staff who wanted to do well for themselves and the company. Because in technology, everybody knows if you were to take an 18-month break, you'd be so far behind, it'd be incredible. I particularly enjoyed the fact with IT Pro TV, it was easy to use. I could download it, I could listen to it in the car, I could watch it on the train, I didn't have to be connected to watch. And if I was watching it across multiple devices, like my Apple TV in the house, I could see where I was and carry on watching it on my laptop. My current job, running a company in Grand Cayman, I never went for. They saw that I'd added the Azure and the Office 365 cert onto my LinkedIn and headhunted me and asked me to move out and help them out. I think I can safely say without IT Pro TV, I wouldn't be where I was today because I only got this job on the back of the qualifications I have.
All right, welcome back, and thank you to Joshua for joining us there. And man, I mean, my key takeaway is just thinking about a wall of flaming people, and that's the best thing you can do.
Big old
to
stack
protect
of
your
them.
business. Yeah.
I think that's the ramifications if you click on one of those emails, right?
That's what it is. Yeah. Well, we fixed the problem because that guy isn't going to click on a link anymore. He's
Yeah.
on fire.
Yeah.
Who knew cybersecurity could smell so bad?
Hair and skin.
I do love those kind of stories, and we really do need. I mean, we talked to Stride Point the week before. We need to get one of these groups to come in and just see how incredibly easy it is to get me to just give them full. Would you like my computer? Would that be easier if I sent it to you?
Let me write down my username and password for you.
So go to what IP address? All right, I'm there.
I'm secure. I use LastPass. Here, I mean, you can log in and run the security challenge for me. And
Fantastic. All right, I did get buzzword bingo there in that one with
lame.
When he said, well, he said he said AI, vulnerable, and hacking, and then I had actionable from Tricking Don there, and then the free space in the center. Anybody else with bingo?
No, I'm a container away from winning,
man.
but
Yeah, I don't even have that. We didn't talk about cryptocurrency whatsoever.
No, we
episode.
haven't in a while because insurance is paying these ransoms now.
So, real quick, did we talk about breaches? Did I miss that one?
it was never actually said.
Oh,
no.
So I was like, I mean, it wouldn't matter because I would need another word.
But you know, speaking of Bitcoin, we didn't cover it because it's Bitcoin is stupid. But
Sure.
did you see that the market's like all over the place right now? The Litecoin has been crashing, and I think it was down 30 or 40%. So Bitcoin is starting to dip as well. So it's another one of those weird fluctuations.
I was getting ready to say because it's Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there goes my retirement.
Yeah.
And it's all.
Oh man, they're gonna call me for additional monies after that purchase I made.
Yeah. Hey, want to let you know about a couple of things going on here at IT Pro TV. First of all, we just had a webinar today, but we're going to be putting the archive up here very shortly. That was for post-compromise tools, brought to you by The Target, Living Off the Land with Daniel Lowry and Don Pizzette here. And he was actually able to get around the antivirus in had everything work in the webinar there. So we had some really cool demos, and we can show how Daniel's able to get a foothold in there and move around pretty freely without being detected once he gains access to a system. So that's definitely a cool one to check out. We have another webinar coming up very shortly that's End of Life for Windows 7. Is your organization prepared? And this will probably be looking at a lot of governments or, I mean, those are the kind of organizations that are still using Windows 7 in a lot of cases because it takes some time to react. And so definitely we can talk about making sure your organization is ready for that, and that's with Cherokee and Wes. That'll be taking place Thursday, October 10th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to check that webinar out or any of the past webinars, you can head over to itpro.tv/webinars. We have the upcoming ones as well as the full list of all the ones in the past that you can go ahead and view the video for and check those out. So head over there today. Also, while you're on the internet, why not head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. There you can get a 30% off code for the lifetime of your account. You can also request a demo of the IT Pro TV backend for businesses and see all the cool things that are available if you do have a team as well. So that's go.itpro.tv/Technado. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Any key takeaways this week?
I'm just glad someone won bingo.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while. Maybe we need to reassess.
I should have screened out
words.
bingo. I did write down a couple words during this. OS, malware, and ransomware were a few words I thought about
we've
adding.
been talking about ransomware because
I thought ransomware was on our list.
What is it? It's not on my sheet today, but not all things are on all sheets.
Actually, I think we talked about putting it on a list, but
Uh-huh.
maybe we
Never
never
made it.
actually
Yeah, it's not
put
on
it
mine.
on the list.
Well, I've made a list here, and I'm going to take off things like actionable, ROI, and IPO, which I don't think really.
We
get
could have talked about
mentioned that much.
WeWork's IPO.
Oh,
Those
man.
nutbags.
Weren't those the guys that were locked out of their office by an umbrella for like 2 days?
Which that's not really a WeWork story. That's just a
I know,
don't
but-
put an umbrella behind your door
But
story.
it says something about the staff.
Yeah.
Like, get a brick. Let's get back to work, people.
Or a crowbar.
How hard is this?
Or a credit card.
What's the cost of being down for a full day versus replacing a door? I don't know. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us today, and be sure to tune in next week. We'll have more Technado. We'll see you then.